First contact in the dark, the transport ship Meridian was supposed to be a routine cargo run to the outer colonies. Marcus Chen had made this journey dozens of times before, ferrying supplies and equipment to the frontier settlements that dotted the galaxy's edge. But routine flights don't usually end with emergency landings on uncharted moons. The asteroid field had appeared on sensors, too late to avoid completely. Marcus managed to pilot the crippled ship through the worst of it, but the hull breaches and engine failures left him with only one option. The small moon below looked barren and lifeless, but it had atmosphere and gravity. It would have to do. The crash landing was controlled chaos. Marcus rode the ship down through clouds of dust and debris, watching his instruments fail one by one as the ground rushed up to meet him. The impact threw him against his restraints hard enough to crack ribs, and something warm trickled down his forehead. But he was alive. Emergency power flickered on as Marcus unbuckled himself with shaking hands. The ship's hull was breached in multiple places, and the life support systems were failing. He grabbed an emergency pack in his engineering toolkit, then stumbled toward the rear hatch. The moon's atmosphere was breathable according to his remaining sensors, but he had no idea what else might be waiting outside. The landscape that greeted him was harsh and unforgiving. Rocky outcroppings jutted from dusty plains, and strange formations twisted to war of old copper. Twin suns hung low on the horizon, casting everything in shades of amber and rust. Marcus's ribs protested with every breath, and his left ankle throbbed where he twisted it during the crash. He needed shelter, and he needed it soon. The temperature readings on his suit showed that night would bring freezing cold, and his damaged ribs wouldn't let him travel far. A series of cave openings in a nearby cliff face offered the best hope for protection from the elements. The caves were deeper than they appeared from outside. Marcus's flashlight beam revealed tunnels that stretched back into darkness, carved from smooth stone that felt too regular to be natural. The air inside was warmer and carried a strange metallic scent that made his nose wrinkle. But it was dry and protected from the wind, so he set up camp in a small chamber near the entrance. His emergency supplies were limited. Food bars that tasted like cardboard, water recycling tablets, and a basic medical kit. Marcus cleaned the cut on his forehead and wrapped his ribs as best he could, but moving still sent spikes of pain through his chest. The emergency beacon in his pack was broadcasting a distress signal, but he had no idea if anyone would hear it this far from the shipping lanes dot as the twin suns set and darkness fell. Marcus tried to sleep despite the pain. The cave was quiet, except for the whisper of wind through the tunnels and the occasional sound of settling stone. He'd almost drifted off when he heard something else. A soft scraping sound like claws on rock coming from deeper in the cave system. Marcus sat up slowly, trying to control his breathing. His flashlight was within reach, but turning it on might draw attention to himself. The scraping sound came again, closer this time. Something was moving through the tunnels with deliberate care, and it was heading in his direction. The beam of his flashlight revealed nothing but empty stone when he finally clicked it on. But the silence that followed was different now, heavy. With watching presence, Marcus kept the light steady, scanning the chamber walls and the tunnel entrance. His heart hammered against his injured ribs. "I know you're there," he said quietly, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need shelter for the night." A sound like soft laughter echoed from the darkness beyond his light. Then a voice answered. Him, speaking perfect English with an accent he couldn't place. "Shelter," the voice said, and there was amusement in it. "Yes, I suppose that's what you need. Among other things?" The speaker stepped into his light, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. She was tall and lean, with pale skin that seemed to glow in the flashlight beam. Her hair was silver white and fell in waves past her shoulders, but it was her eyes that made his chest tighten with instinctive fear. They were large and completely black, without visible pupils or iris, and they reflected his light like a nocturnal predator's. Her features were sharp and angular, beautiful in an alien way that was both alluring and dangerous. When she smiled, Marcus saw teeth that were too white and slightly too pointed. Her fingers ended in claws that looked capable of shredding metal, and she moved with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect muscular control. "You smell like fear," she said, tilting her head to study him, "and pain, and something else. Something that makes my mouth water." Marcus swallowed hard but kept his light steady on her. "What are you?" "I'm Kira," she replied, as if that answered everything. "And you're trespassing in my territory." "I crashed," Marcus said. "My ship was damaged in an asteroid field. I'm not here by choice." Kira circled him slowly, staying just at the edge of his light. Her movements were predatory, calculating. No, I watched your ship fall from the sky like a wounded bird. I was curious to see what would crawl out of the wreckage. And now that you've seen..." She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the way her nostrils flared as she breathed in his scent. "Now I'm trying to decide whether to kill you quickly or play with you first." The words should have terrified him, but there was something in her tone that didn't match the threat. Marcus studied her face in the flashlight beam, looking for clues to her intentions. "You're not going to kill me," he said. Kira's head tilted the other way, like a bird considering a puzzle. "No? And why is that?" "Because you haven't already. Done it. You could have attacked me while I was setting up camp, or when I was treating my injuries. Instead, you announced yourself. Predators don't usually give their prey a warning." A slow smile spread across her lips, revealing more of those sharp teeth. "Perhaps I enjoy the hunt more than the kill." "Or perhaps you're lonely," Marcus said. Quietly, the smile disappeared from her face, replaced by something harder. "Lonely," she repeated, as if testing the word. "What would you know about lonely, human?" "I know that you've been watching me since I arrived. I know that you speak my language perfectly, which means you've had contact with humans before. And I know that truly dangerous predators don't waste time with conversation." Kira stared at him for a long moment, her black eyes unreadable. Then she laughed, a sound like silver bells with an edge of broken glass. "Clever prey. Very well, human. I won't kill you tonight. But don't mistake my curiosity for kindness." She turned and began walking back toward the tunnel entrance, her pale form already fading into the darkness beyond his light. "Wait," Marcus called after her. "What is this place?" Kira paused at the edge of the light. "A tomb," she said without turning around. "A monument to the arrogance of your species. Sleep well, Marcus-chan. Tomorrow I'll show you what your people built here." She knew his name. Marcus realized with a chill that she must have been through his belongings while he was unconscious after the crash. The thought of those clawed hands rifling through his personal effects made his skin crawl, but it also raised questions. Why hadn't she simply killed him then? What was she waiting for? Sleep came fitfully, broken by dreams of black eyes and silver teeth. Marcus woke several times to the sound of movement in the tunnels, always just beyond the range of his hearing. But whatever Kira was doing in the darkness, she left him alone. When the pale light of dawn filtered through the cave entrance, Marcus found food waiting beside his makeshift bed. Strange fruits with purple skin and sweet flesh arranged on a flat stone like an offering. There was no sign of Kira, but the food was clearly meant for him. A gift, or perhaps bait for whatever game she was playing. Marcus ate carefully, testing each bite for poison or strange effects. The fruit was surprisingly good, and his body desperately needed the calories. As he ate, he noticed other things he'd missed in the darkness. Marks on the cave walls that looked like claw scores, arranged in patterns too regular to be random. And deeper in the chamber, partially hidden by shadows, the glint of metal. He explored cautiously, using his flashlight to reveal what Kira had left hidden. It was a door, or what remained of one. The metal was corroded and twisted, but he could make out corporate logos and warning symbols in several languages. Beneath them, in faded letters, he read, Xenobiology Research Station, Omega-7. A research station. That explained the artificial regularity of the caves, the metallic scent in the air, and why Kira spoke perfect English. This place had been built by humans, probably decades ago, judging by the corrosion, But what had they been researching here? And what had happened to them? Curious, aren't you? Kira's voice came from behind him, and Marcus jumped. He hadn't heard her approach. It's a human trait, he said, turning to face her. In the daylight filtering through the cave entrance, she looked different, less threatening, more sad. What happened here? Your people came to this moon 50 years ago, Kira said, moving to stand beside the ruined door. They built a research facility deep underground, connected to these natural cave systems. They wanted to study the native life forms, to see what could be learned from evolution in this harsh environment. And they found you? Kira's smile was bitter. No, Marcus. They made me. The words hit him like a physical blow. Made you? Genetic engineering. DNA splicing. They took the most efficient predators from this world and combined them with human genetic material. The perfect hunter, they called me. Faster than any human, stronger, with senses that could track prey across kilometers. I was their greatest success. Marcus stared at her, trying to process what she was telling him. You're part human? Enough to think like you do. Enough to speak your language and understand your fears. But not enough to be accepted by either. Species. Kira touched the ruined door with one clawed finger. The facility is still down there, deeper in the cave system. Most of it, anyway. Would you like to see where I was born? Against his better judgment, Marcus nodded. Kira smiled. That sharp-toothed smile and gestured for him to follow her to the darkness. The tunnels descended steeply, carved from living rock and reinforced with metal supports that had seen better days. Marcus's flashlight revealed glimpses of abandoned equipment and empty chambers. The air grew colder as they went deeper, and the metallic scent became stronger. They created others like me, Kira said, as they walked. A dozen different experiments, each one designed to be the perfect predator. But perfection, as it turns out, is harder to control than they expected. What happened to them? The other experiments? Dead. Some killed each other in territorial disputes. Others couldn't handle the psychological stress of being neither fully human nor fully alien. I was the only one who adapted well enough to survive long term. They reached a massive chamber that had once been the heart of the research facility. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens dark and lifeless. In the center of the room stood rows of cylindrical tanks, most of them cracked and empty. But a few still contained the shadowy outlines of failed experiments, preserved in fluid that had turned murky with age. This is where I first opened my eyes, Kira said, touching one of the intact tanks. Where I first drew breath. Where I learned that I was alone in the universe. Marcus looked around the chamber with growing horror. What happened to the researchers? They tried to terminate the project when they realized they couldn't control us. But by then it was too late. We had already learned to hunt. Kira's voice was matter-of-fact, but Marcus could hear the pain beneath it. I was the only one who chose not to kill them all immediately. I gave them a chance to leave. But they didn't take it? Some did. Others stayed behind to try to kind what they had created. They're buried in the tunnels deeper down, where the cave-ins sealed the lower levels. They stood in silence among the ghostly tanks, surrounded by the ruins of human ambition. Marcus felt sick thinking about what had been done here, about the life that had been forced on Kira without her consent. No wonder she viewed humans with such suspicion. Why didn't you leave? He asked quietly. After the researchers were gone. Why stay here? Kira turned to look at him, her black eyes reflecting his flashlight beam. Where would I go? I'm not human enough to live among your people, and I'm not alien enough to belong anywhere else. This is the only home I've ever known. You could have tried. 50 years is a long time to spend alone. Yes, she said softly. It is. They made their way back to the upper levels in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Marcus's ribs still ached, but the pain seemed less important now. He had found something more significant than shelter in these caves. He had found someone who understood what it meant to be truly alone. When they reached his makeshift camp, Kira surprised him by sitting down across from him instead of disappearing back into the tunnels. She watched him with those unreadable black eyes, her head tilted in that characteristic gesture of curiosity. Tell me about yourself, Marcus Chen, she said. What brought you to the edge of nowhere? Marcus leaned back against the cave wall, considering his answer. Cargo runs mostly. I transport supplies to the frontier colonies. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well and keeps me moving. Always moving, Kira observed, running from something. Aren't we all? She smiled at that. Fair point. What are you running from? Marcus was quiet for a moment, surprised by his own willingness to open up to this strange, dangerous woman. My family has expectations. They want me to follow a safe, predictable path. Corporate job, suburban life, 2.5 children, and a retirement fund. But I've never been good at predictable. So you chose the stars instead. I chose freedom. The ability to go where I want, when I want. No one to disappoint but myself. Kara nodded slowly. I understand that. Freedom is something I've never had. I was created for a purpose, designed to fulfill someone else's vision of what I should be. Even my instincts aren't entirely my own. But you chose not to kill me, Marcus pointed out. That's freedom, isn't it? The ability to go against your programming? Perhaps, she said, but she didn't sound convinced. Or perhaps I'm just curious to see what you'll do next. You're not like the researchers who created me. You don't look at me like I'm a monster. You're not a monster. You're a person who was dealt a terrible hand and made the best of it. Kira's laugh was soft and bitter. A person with claws and fangs who was literally designed to hunt and kill. If that's not a monster, what is? A monster is someone who chooses to cause harm for pleasure. You've had 50 years to perfect your hunting skills, but you chose not to kill me. That makes you more human than the people who created you. She stared at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. You're either very brave or very foolish, Marcus Chen. Probably both, he admitted. But I've never been good at taking the safe option. As the day wore on, they talked about many things. Kira told him about the strange creatures that lived in the deeper tunnels, the ones that had driven her to claim the upper levels as her territory. Marcus shared stories from his travels, descriptions of worlds and peoples that Kira had never seen. When evening came, Marcus expected her to disappear again into the depths of the cave system. Instead, she lingered near his camp, her pale form visible in the shadows just beyond his light. The nights are cold here, she said quietly. And there are things that hunt in the darkness, predators that even I avoid. Are you warning me or offering protection? Both, she said. You smell like prey, Marcus. But you're my prey now, and I don't share. The possessiveness in her voice should have alarmed him, but instead Marcus felt oddly comforted by it. In her twisted way, Kira was offering to keep him safe. It was more protection than he'd had in years. Thank you, he said simply. She moved closer, settling herself on the opposite side of his small camp. Even in the darkness, he could see the reflection of her eyes watching him. Sleep, she said. I'll keep watch. For the first time since the crash, Marcus felt truly safe. As he drifted off to sleep, he could hear Kira moving quietly around the chamber, a predator standing guard over her chosen prey. It was the strangest lullaby he'd ever heard, but it worked. He slept deeply and dreamlessly, protected by someone who had every reason to consider him an enemy. In the morning, he would wake to find her gone again, vanished into the tunnels like a silver ghost. But the memory of her vigil would stay with him, a reminder that even the most unlikely bonds could form in the darkness. And somewhere in the depths of the abandoned research station, Kira would be thinking about the human who had looked at her without fear, who had seen past her fangs and claws to the lonely person beneath. The game between them was far from over, but the rules were changing, and neither of them was quite sure what that meant. Asterisk. The hunt becomes protection. Marcus woke to the sound of something screaming in the depths of the cave system. The sound was unlike anything he'd ever heard, a mixture of rage and agony that made his blood run cold. He sat up quickly, ignoring the protest from his healing ribs, and grabbed his flashlight. The screaming cut off abruptly, replaced by an ominous silence that was somehow worse than the noise had been. Marcus strained his ears, listening for any sign of movement in the tunnels. His emergency beacon blinked steadily in the corner of his camp, still broadcasting its hopeless distress signal into the void. "Kira," he called softly, but received no answer. A new sound reached him, then different from the scream. It was a wet sliding noise, like something large and soft dragging itself across stone. The sound was coming from the tunnel that led deeper into the facility, and it was getting closer. Marcus stood carefully, keeping his light pointed toward the tunnel entrance. His engineering toolkit contained a plasma cutter that might serve as a weapon, but he doubted it would be effective against whatever was making that sound. Where was Kira when he needed her? The sliding sound grew louder, and Marcus caught his first glimpse of what was approaching. It was massive, easily 3 meters across, and seemed to be made of translucent flesh that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Dozens of tentacles writhed beneath its bulk, and as it moved into his light, he could see clusters of eyes scattered across its surface like dark pearls. The creature paused at the edge of his campsite, its many eyes focusing on him with unsettling intelligence. Marcus held perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. The plasma cutter was within reach, but he doubted he could draw it before those tentacles reached him. Then Kira dropped from the ceiling, like a silver shadow, landing between Marcus and the creature with her claws extended. She hissed at the thing, a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe, and it recoiled slightly. "Back off, crawler," she snarled. "This one is mine." The creature made a sound like bubbling water, its tentacles writhing in what might have been communication. Kira responded with another hiss, more aggressive this time, and took a step forward. Her claws gleamed in the flashlight beam, and her muscles were coiled for action. For a moment, the two predators faced each other in tense silence. Then the crawler made its decision. It began sliding backward into the tunnel, its bioluminescent patterns fading as it retreated into the darkness. Within seconds, it was gone, leaving only a trail of slime to mark its passage. Kira remained in her defensive crouch until the last echoes of the creature's movement faded away. Then she straightened, turned to face Marcus, her black eyes reflecting his light. "What was that thing?" Marcus asked, his voice shakier than he would have liked. "Cave crawler," Kira replied, settling back on her heels. "They usually stay in the deeper levels, but sometimes they come up hunting. They're attracted to warmth and movement. And they're afraid of you?" "Respectful," she corrected. "We have an understanding. The upper levels are my territory, and I don't venture into their domain. But your scent has them curious. They know there's new prey in the caves." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what had just happened. "How many of those things are down there?" "Several dozen, at least. The research facility bred them as test subjects for their experiments. When the humans abandoned this place, the crawlers spread throughout the lower tunnel system." Kira moved closer to his camp, her movements fluid and predatory. "They're not the only things that hunt in the darkness." "Great," Marcus muttered. "And here I thought crashing on a deserted moon was the worst thing that could happen to me." "This moon isn't deserted," Kira said, with a sharp smile. "It's very much alive. The humans who built the facility thought they could control the life they created here, but evolution doesn't follow corporate schedules." Over the next few hours, Kira told him about the various creatures that had claimed different parts of the underground complex, the crawlers in the lower levels, the razor birds that nested in the upper ventilation shafts, and the shadow hunters that could phase in and out of visibility at will. Each species had adapted to fill a specific ecological niche in the artificial environment. "The researchers created a miniature ecosystem," Kira explained as they ate breakfast together. "Predators, prey, scavengers, and everything in between. But they underestimated how quickly things would evolve once they were left unsupervised." "And you're at the top of the food chain?" "I'm the apex predator in this section of the caves," she said with evident pride. "But even I have to be careful. in some areas. The shadow hunters in particular are dangerous because they hunt in packs. Marcus was beginning to understand why Kira had seemed so confident during their first encounter. She wasn't just a lone predator in an empty cave system. She was the ruler of a complex and dangerous ecosystem, and she had just claimed him as part of her territory. Why are you protecting me? He asked suddenly. You could have let that crawler take me and solved your problem. Kira was quiet for a moment, her head tilted in that characteristic gesture of consideration. I'm not sure, she said, finally. At first, I thought I was just playing with you, amusing myself before the kill, but now... She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Now I find myself wanting to keep you alive. The admission seemed to cost her something. It's been 50 years since I had someone to talk to. Someone who didn't immediately try to kill me or run away screaming. I'm not ready to give that up yet. Marcus felt a strange warmth at her words. So I'm useful to you. You're more than useful, Kira said, her voice so quiet he had to strain. To hear it, you're the first person who's looked at me and seen something other than a monster. Before Marcus could respond, the sound of scraping claws echoed from one of the side tunnels. Kira was on her feet instantly, her body tense and ready for action. 3 creatures emerged from the darkness, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of pack intelligence. The shadow hunters were smaller than the cave crawler, but far more dangerous. They looked like twisted combinations of spider and wolf with 8 legs ending in razor-sharp claws and bodies that seemed to shift and blur at the edges. Their eyes glowed with a pale green light, and their movements were unnaturally silent. Stay. Behind me, Kira whispered, her voice barely audible. Don't run. Don't make sudden movements. And whatever you do, don't shine your light directly at them. They can use photons to phase shift. The shadow hunters spread out, trying to surround them. Marcus could see their strategy clearly. They were pack hunters, used to working together to bring down larger prey. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had entered Kira's territory, and she didn't take kindly to TRESPA. SERS. Moved like liquid mercury, flowing between the hunters with impossible speed. Her claws found vulnerable points in their shifting forms, drawing dark blood that steamed in the cool air. The hunters tried to phase out of her reach, but Kira seemed to anticipate their movements, striking at where they would be rather than where they were. The fight lasted less than a minute. When it was over, 2 of the shadow hunters lay dead, and the 3rd had retreated back into the tunnel system. Kira stood over the bodies, breathing hard, her claws dripping with alien blood. Are you hurt? Marcus asked, stepping forward carefully. Minor scratches, she replied, examining a shallow. Cut on her arm. They're fast, but not fast enough. Marcus opened his medical kit and began cleaning the wound. Kira tensed at first, clearly unused to being touched, but she didn't pull away. Her skin was warm and surprisingly soft, despite its pale, almost translucent appearance. You fight like you were born to it, he said as he worked. I was born to it, she replied. 50 years of survival in this place teaches you efficiency. Every fight could be your last, so you learn to end them quickly. As Marcus applied a bandage to her arm, he noticed something else. Kira was trembling very slightly, and her breathing was still elevated. It wasn't from the fight. It was from his touch. When was the last time someone touched you? He asked. Gently. Kira's laugh was bitter. The researchers, when they were conducting their tests, and that was hardly gentle. I mean, really touched you. Not as a test subject, but as a person. She was quiet for a long moment. Never, she said finally. I've never been touched with kindness. Marcus finished with the bandage and looked up at her. In the soft light of his flashlight, she looked younger somehow. Vulnerable. The predators. Mask had slipped, revealing the lonely person beneath. I'm sorry, he said. No one should have to live like that. It's what I am, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. It's what they made you, Marcus corrected. But it's not who you have to be. The rest of the day passed quietly. Kira showed Marcus more of the cave system, pointing out safe paths and dangerous areas. She taught him to recognize the signs of different predators, the sounds that meant danger, and the places where he could find food and water. It was like learning to read a new language, one written in claw marks and scent trails. Marcus found himself fascinated by the complexity of the ecosystem that had evolved in the abandoned facility. Every tunnel told a story, every chamber had its own microenvironment. You really love this place, he observed as they explored. A chamber filled with bioluminescent fungi. It's my home, Kira said simply. The only home I've ever known. I understand every corner of it, every creature that lives here. They're all part of me in a way, but you're alone in it. I was alone in it, she corrected, giving him a meaningful look. Now I have a guest. That evening they returned to Marcus's camp as the artificial day cycle of the facility began to dim. The emergency beacon was still blinking, still broadcasting its signal into the void. Marcus had almost forgotten about the possibility of rescue. His world had narrowed to these caves, to the strange woman who ruled them. Do you want to be rescued? Kira asked, noticing his gaze on the beacon. I don't know anymore, Marcus admitted. A few days ago, the answer would have been obvious. But now ... I'm not sure what I want. The outside world hasn't changed. You could still go back to your cargo runs, your freedom among the stars, but I'd be leaving you behind. Kira's expression was unreadable. I've been alone for 50 years. I can manage alone again. That's not the point, Marcus said. The point is that you shouldn't have to. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the bioluminescent patterns on the chamber walls pulse with slow, hypnotic rhythms. Marcus found himself studying Kira's profile in the soft light, noting the way her silver hair caught the illumination, the elegant line of her neck, the subtle curves beneath her practical clothing. You're staring, she said, without looking. At him. Sorry, I was just thinking. About what? About how beautiful you are? Kira turned to face him, her black eyes wide with surprise. Beautiful? I am a genetic aberration with claws and fangs. You're also graceful, intelligent, stronger than anyone I've ever met. You've survived 50 years in conditions that would kill most people, and you've done it with dignity and honor. How is that not beautiful? She stared at him for a long moment, her expression cycling through surprise, suspicion, and something. That might have been hope. You're serious. Dead serious. I smell like predator. I move like a hunter. I have instincts that tell me to tear your throat out, and yet you don't. You protect me instead. You share your food with me. You teach me about your world. You sit with me in the darkness. Those aren't the actions of a monster. Kira was quiet for a long time, her gaze fixed on the glowing fungi across the chamber. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. The researchers told me I was an abomination, a violation of natural law. They said I was too dangerous to live, too alien to understand human concepts like love or friendship. The researchers were wrong about a lot of things, Marcus said. Maybe they were wrong about that too. Maybe, she said softly. As the night deepened, Marcus prepared for sleep. But instead of disappearing into the tunnels as she had the previous nights, Kira remained nearby. She sat with her back against the cave wall, her eyes reflecting the dim light of his emergency beacon. You don't have to stay, Marcus said. I know you prefer the deeper tunnels. I prefer to be alone, she corrected. Or at least, I thought I did. But having you here ... it changes things. I find myself not wanting to be alone anymore. Then don't be. Kira looked at him, her expression vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before. I don't know how to be close to someone. My instincts tell me to maintain distance, to keep potential threats at arm's length. But you're not a threat, are you? Not to you, Marcus assured her. Never to you. She moved closer, settling asterisk.